Hello and welcome back to the Amputee Angler for another Fish Fridays, where every Friday at 6 o'clock I'll sit down with you and I'll discuss one of the many fish species we've got here that live in and around the UK, and we'll talk rigs, tactics, sizes and descriptions. And this week we're going to talk about the Plaice. So let's talk about the Plaice. Probably the first ever flatfish that you ever caught. I know it was mine as a kid. Really common fish here in the UK, found all along the south coast, and they have high numbers up the west coast as well. You do find them around the east and up the north and stuff, but they're not as in the numbers as they are down here into the west. Really predominant, like I said. They are targeted highly by commercials in beam trawls, set nets and also stern trawlers because there is so many. Not a particularly high value fish, but there is a lot of them. Plaice, like I said, they're a flatfish, brilliant white on the bottom on the underside, eyes on the top of their head, and then they are a light brown with bright orange spots, which is what's give the Plaice its distinctive colours. On the bigger Plaice, the orange spots, I've seen them as big as 2p pieces when I've been commercial, and we've had some real big ones. And we had a 7-pound Plaice once in the net, just literally a mile offshore in Seaford Bay. Absolute monster of a Plaice, and the spots on it were like that. Records then, current shore record is £8.6, which is a big Plaice from the shore, and the boat record is a couple of pound bigger at £10.3. Again, that is an absolutely cracking fish. Rigs then, Plaice tend to be caught on the drift. You do get them anchor as well, but predominantly it's on the drift because you're covering more ground, and they can be quite patchy. They will move in with the tide, so they'll be on one bit of ground, and as the tide picks up, they'll flutter down the tide. Predominantly they move and feed in the daytime, and then they tend to settle down at night and not be as active. Not to say that you won't catch them at night, but daytime is the best time for them. Early morning, first light, predominantly the best place to get a Plaice. Rigs then, my favourite rig is a Plaice spreader bar, and I'm talking from the boat here now, okay, shore is different, but a Plaice spreader bar from the boat. And that's essentially a bar. It's normally made out of coat hanger type stuff if you're going to make them yourself, but you can buy them from the shop. 6 to 8 inches long. You clip your weight in the middle. I like to use a watch lead because it sits flat and pins it to the bottom. And then off either end, you have a short trace with a little length of fluorocarbon and a small hook on either end. And I like to use worm baits when I'm doing that. So I will use ragworm or lugworm. Fresh or old, I don't tend to have much problems with either. When I'm Plaice fishing, I find they're not particularly fussy, especially when I'm on the boat. And all that does then is that sits on the bottom and you tow it along there, and then eventually the Plaice will come along and find it. And the bar also kicks up a lot of dirt and stuff, which gets the Plaice interested, and they're inquisitive fish, Plaice. And if they see a bit of movement or a bright bit of colour, they come over to investigate, and that's when you get them. Double shots using that method are not uncommon. Other ways of fishing for them on the boat or the shore is a flowing rig. So this is where the weight comes first and then your line is off of the weight. So it's flapping about more. That's another method that works really well. The specialist anglers from the shore, they like using a pulley rig, a one hook clip down pulley, so they can get the distance from the shore. Obviously in a boat, you're already in deeper water, so you haven't got a cast, you've just got to let it down. But you can use crab baits as well and mussels. The smaller Plaice will be on the sand, and the bigger ones as well. But as a Plaice gets bigger, the food source tends to change from them, and they move away from worms, and they will still eat worm, but they tend to move on to things like crabs and mussels as well, and that forms more of their staple diet. And the bigger ones you'll tend to find on little patches of reef and also mussel beds. If you find a mussel bed as a fisherman, mark it on your plotter because it will hold big Plaice at certain times of the year, and they get in there and they get hold of all these broken shells that have been broken up in a storm, and they literally rip the meat out of the mussel shells, and that's what these big fat Plaice are growing on. If you ever gut a big Plaice and get the guts out of it, I guarantee you it's filled up with mussel shells and crabs. Really, really good place to find good Plaice. But like I said, worm baits is preferable for Plaice because that's where they are, they're bottom feeders, so that's what they're normally feeding on most of the time. So a nice fresh lugworm or a fresh ragworm, you won't go too wrong. They will also take a fish bait, so a little tiny strip of mackerel, and I mean like the little bit of belly meat, hook once through the tail. You can also use peeler crab whipped up. That also tends to isolate the bigger fish as well. So baits wise, you've got quite a selection there. They're not particularly fussy, but that's what I found tend to work best for me. So gear wise then, Plaice, although they do get fairly sizable, predominantly you're going to be fishing inside nice and close, and you want some light gear that's going to match the type of fishing you're doing. I use a 20-60 gram Akuma Helios spinning rod, and I match that with a Penn Battle 2 or a Penn Battle 3 reel, some light braid, and then I use a length of fluorocarbon rubbing leader, which I do on most of my fishing, and then that's what I clip onto my end gear, okay? There's absolutely no need to go really big and heavy with Plaice fishing. The lighter you go with any sort of fishing, the more sport you get out of it. And Plaice fishing can be good fun when you're using light spinning gear. It's easier in your hands. You feel every bite when you've got one. You see it, the rods are nice and tippy. If you start trying to Plaice fish with a massive 20-30 pound class rod, or even a 12-20, you lose a lot of the action and you lose a lot of the fun. So just keep it light, keep it simple. Use braid, because then it's really sensitive, but it cuts through the water more, which means you can use less lead, and that's a generic thing across fishing. The thinner the braid, the less lead you get away with. So one, you're not bringing in as much gear on the way back up, and if you lose gear, it's not as much. But also, you just feel that a lot more. You get a nice Plaice on a nice spinning rod, you can actually play it and you can feel every movement that it's doing. And occasionally you'll pick up something nicer like a ray or a bass or a cod. And it's just that bit of extra fun when you're Plaice fishing. So yeah, keep it nice and simple. Sort of 2-3 ounce leads, obviously tide dependent. Okay, I appreciate that. If you're fishing back in the Isle of Wight, on the sandbanks there where the tide runs through, you may well have to step up. But my advice when you're Plaice fishing is keep the gear light and just enjoy it and have fun, because they are pretty scrappy when you get one on. Top tips for Plaice then. Top tip number 1 is coloured beads and spinner blades. They absolutely love a little bit of colour, Plaice, so don't be scared to go in there and bling it up, all right? Just be aware the more you put on, the more it's going to catch and drag in the tide. So you might A, need more lead, and B, you might find it spins up if you're going down in deeper water, depending where you're fishing, of course. But they do love a colour. Beads, colours that I've found tend to work well is green and black and orange and yellow. Again, that's a personal preference thing. If you ask anyone what their favourite colours are for Plaice, they probably give you a different answer each time you ask them. Personally, green and black and orange and yellow. And also what I will say is there will be a day where they prefer one colour over another. And I promise you, if you run a test when you're Plaice fishing for a year and you have orange and yellow on one and green and black on another, there'll be days where you're out fishing on one colour, 3, 4, 5 to 1 some days to the other, and then the next trip you go out, it will be different. And I don't ask me why. I've been doing it years now. That's what I found. Is some days they just want a different colour to the other one, okay? And I know there's other fishermen out there that would agree with that. So run your own tests. By all means, you can use other colours. You can use spinner blades. You can use rattly beads as well. But do bling it up. Loomy beads, little loomy beads, big round solid coloured beads, and a few little tiny spinner blades. Go crazy with it. Find what works for you, but use a bit of colour in your rigs. And the second and final tip I'm going to give you for the Plaice, and it's a nice easy one, is when you've got a lot of Plaice on the ground, if you fish small hooks, and you do have to fish smallish hooks for Plaice because of the way their mouths are, they have quite a small mouth Plaice, although the lips are quite tough. So something like an Aberdeen, something like a worm hook, nice and sharp razor point. If you're going to fish for Plaice, when there's a lot of them on the ground, you can scale up your hook size and grade out the size of Plaice you're getting. So if you find you get a lot of small Plaice and you might be happy with the numbers and just to have the action, in which case by all means stick to what you're doing, and a big one may come along and take the smaller hook. But if you're getting fed up with the small spatty Plaice, as I call them, the smaller ones, upgrade your hook size and they won't be able to get it in their mouths, and you'll find that your bigger ones will start taking the baits who can get it in their mouths, so you'll start getting the bigger Plaice. It's a simple little tip and it's a simple little trick, but I found it does work when there's a lot of small Plaice on the ground. And what you can also do is change your baits up. So rather than go to a worm bait, start whipping on a bit of peeler crab, just to grade out those fish and try and get those bigger keeper Plaice for one for the table if you want to take one home. Nice and simple, but it does work and it is effective. So that's it for another Fish Fridays, and that was the Plaice with me, Ben, the Amputee Angler. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. Please do like and subscribe. I have a whole playlist on Fish Fridays, and it's going to cover every single fish in the UK that we're going to fish for here. So if you're interested in learning a bit about fishing, or you want to know the current records, or perhaps you're new to fishing, perhaps you've got kids that are coming into fishing and you want a bit of experience and a bit of sort of this is what they look like, this is how you catch them, please do go and watch the rest of the videos, and please do like and subscribe, because it's real. I'm really grateful for it, and I enjoy putting the content out for you. So it'd be nice to know that it's appreciated. So I'll catch you all again soon, and thanks for watching.